So we are live. Tayo, I am so pleased you are here today. I'm just going to say some good stuff about Tayo while he just relaxes a little bit. He just ran here. Did he run here or kind of run here?
Speed walk.
Speed walk. It was like a dance walk. So I wouldn't be surprised. So he was helping somebody out, and I love that about him. That was awesome. So he's helping somebody out. So he ran a little bit late, and that's cool. So, thank you so much, Tayo. Tayo's a Christian. It's good to have a Christian here because we talk about the Bible. Um, let me say something about myself. I'm a Muslim. I do happiness classes, um, and they're principles that anybody can live by. But you might be thinking, what on earth has death of Jesus got to do with anything practical? And the simple answer is something like simplifying the truth as I understand it so you can get to the truth, because the truth is reality. If you know reality well, then you can navigate it well, then you'll be happier. Most people don't understand reality very well. They don't even understand how their brain works. So I talk about psychology and science and stuff like that, or mix it up with Islam. And yeah. Are you ready, Karate Kid? I like it. All right. Do you want to say
Yes,
something about
absolutely.
yourself? I introduced you as the Christian, but put some other words in, please.
Yeah, I think for the context of this conversation, the Christian is a fine label, and it's one that I'm proud to wear. So that's okay. And I I think this conversation was birthed from one that you had previously, where there was the you made the claim that Jesus didn't die on the cross, which I found interesting, and I sort of asked you to provide evidence, and you were kind enough to send me some resources, which I have looked through, and I hope we can have some good discussions regarding those claims.
Cool. Yeah. I suppose people should know that my style is, although people see me as a debater, I'm like, here's the info. If you don't agree, I'm interested in what you think. I'll learn about it, but whatever, man. But I just also I think it's really. I should say one more thing before we get started. Is something like this. The stuff I'm going to say about the proof of Jesus not dying on the cross is unique to Ahmadi Muslims. And who are Ahmadi Muslims? We are the promised revival of Islam. So Islam, Prophet Muhammad said that the Muslims would go to terror. Let's say they'll be very confused and lost and split into sects, and the revival of true Islam obviously involves the true teachings of Islam rather than the confusion that a lot of Muslims have about this. And so Tayo said, let's quickly talk about a bit about the Islamic perspective. And I thought, oh, afterwards, I thought, you know what, that really makes sense because it kind of rounds it off because he was like seeing when he did a bit of research, it's like, oh, most Muslims think Jesus floated into the skies, waiting for 2,000 years, wanted to come back, and he didn't die. So let's get into that really quickly then. So, and of course, so I've done the intros. What's the point? Done that bit already. And now here comes a verse of the Holy Quran, which is sort of the key to the whole thing. Because the Quran says something really unusual, which is, I'm paraphrasing and I'll read it in a second, is that Jesus didn't die on the cross. He was put on the cross, but he didn't die on the cross, which is an interesting claim. And all the Muslims believe that, but they how that happened is disputed. So let's read this verse of the Holy Quran. And they're saying, we did kill the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, whereas they slew him not, nor crucified him. Crucified means, in this case, killed by crucifixion, not just put on the cross. Um, but he was made a he was made to appear to them like one crucified. So that kind of clarifies some people who are confused about that. The second part clarifies that yes, he was put on the cross, but he would look like he died on the cross. Yeah, I won't over explain it, but he didn't actually die on the cross. And those who differ therein, very old English, sometimes I make an effort to make it easier to understand, because those people who disputed the idea that he died on the cross is what they're saying here, and are certainly in a state of doubt, and we'll see that from the biblical verses I'm going to show later on. They have no definite knowledge of his being killed on the cross, thereof, they say, but only follow a conjecture, and they did not convert this conjecture into certainty. That's the Quran, chapter 4, verse 157. And I say Sunni because, as an Ahmadi Muslim, I actually say is verse 158 because I say the first verse is the first verse, but I don't want to get into that boring detail too much. But just for people's references, when they check it out, though, mostly over the internet, they'll see chapter 4, verse 157. So that's just a starting point. And there's another verse of the Holy Quran I might go into. There's actually loads of verses in the Holy Quran that show that Jesus didn't die on the cross, according to the Muslim belief. And he said didn't fly up anywhere and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Tayo, what do you think so far?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I read through the resources you sent me a couple of times, and the Ahmadiyya perspective seems to differ a little bit from the other Muslim interpretation of what happened with Jesus. But one thing that is constant is that between the three major religions, Islam, Christianism, and Judaism, Islam's the only one that disputed the death of Christ. And it was actually it was something that I knew was out there, but I didn't know how prominent it was. So doing research, I discovered that basically what we'll be speaking about today is called the swoon hypothesis, which is
Yes.
any hypothesis that suggests that Jesus didn't die on the cross, but was rather made to look unconscious and then later revived. So yeah, I look forward to getting into it.
I mean, and I don't know if it's worth pointing out. I'll just point out very quickly. So the verse of the Holy Quran that people believe means that Jesus flew to heaven when he was on the cross. It says, and when Allah said, "Oh Jesus, I'll cause you to die a natural death, and I will exalt you," which can be translated as raised to myself. So they say he flew to God. But the problem is, there's a couple of problems. The same word, the word exalt or raised, is used for Muslims when they pray, or any believers, quite frankly. I think, yeah, believers. Yeah, so believers, when they pray, they are raised to God. They're made closer to God. So nobody thinks you can get closer to God because God isn't limited to one particular location. And the Quran talks about God being in the heaven and the earth as well. So I could go into that more. Do you feel like there's any need to go into that more? Okay, let's get into the main thing. So what I'm really excited about is putting forward a perspective that will show Jesus as a man. And the fun thing about that for me, like I put in the thumbnail, is like, will you be able to unsee that? So let's see what happens. So I'll start with what Jesus said himself. Okay. So he said, I'll quote from Matthew 12, 39 to 40. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous, I'll highlight it, I suppose, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So let's paraphrase this for people who have not heard this before and it sounds really weird. So I've got a student of mine who I wanted him to explain this at Speaker's Call when he's 14 years old, and he said he looked at this and he said this is really confusing. So I will paraphrase this stuff and make it sound a bit easier. What is it saying? He's saying that Jesus is saying to the Jews that they're terrible people, and that the sign that they should expect to see is similar to the sign of Jonah. And a lot of people, even if they're not religious, hopefully they know the story of Jonah and the whale. He got eaten up by the whale, eaten up, swallowed is probably a bit more accurate. Okay. And then he came out the other side, the whale spat him out. So, first question for you, Tayo, before I continue explaining this, is do you think Jonah died in the whale?
Can I respond to what you've said so far before I answer your question?
Oh yeah, go on. I won't limit to you, but I kind of wanted to break it down, but you could respond and then explain what you think if Jonah had died in the whale or not after you've done whatever you want to say.
I'll sort of circle back to your question.
Cool. Thank you.
I think first it's just to clarify the verse that you did read from. Just the verse before, it shows that he's speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, Jesus himself was a Pharisee. That's with the sect that it will be most closest to, and that's also the sect is most critical of in the gospel narratives, because I think, as you would know, you're more critical of your own than you are of others. So this verse is very prominent, and it's important to know the context. So he's speaking to the Pharisees, speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees, and he's sort of admonishing them. And in the verse itself, Jesus himself explains the meaning and why he chose the metaphor of Jonah. I'm just going to. Have you got a scripture up, or no? You've just got a section of it.
I've just got copy paste. But do you want to share something on the screen?
Yeah,
is anything, or I could do it if you like. How does it? You know what? It's better if you control it. Okay, so I'll stop presenting for all that. Let me hide this thing. Can you see any button to share screen on the bottom? It says present.
Yes. I've done that, and I think you just have to click to add to screen.
Do I have to click to allow something? Oh yes, cool. Go for it. Yeah.
There we go. So I'm just going to. It's Matthew 12. So I just want to get the full context behind the verse that you quoted, and it's Matthew 12. Yeah, so this is the verse I was pointing to earlier. It says, "Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered them, saying, 'Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you.' But he answered them, 'An evil and adulterous generation seek for a sign, but no sign will be given to it, except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment of the generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here.'" I don't have to read the whole thing, but people can go and read for themselves. And I just want to point out a few. Firstly, he said the men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment of this generation. It was pointing to the Pharisees and the scribes and calling them, referring to them as the sons of Nineveh that don't believe. So believe in him, believe in Jesus, that is. That's the first thing why he used that metaphor, as he explained. And secondly, as the verse explained, 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. This is where I'm going to answer your question. That does not suggest to me that it is going to be. He used the metaphor because Jonah was alive and is also going to be alive, like Jonah was in the metaphor. So I do believe Jonah was alive in the whale, but I don't believe Jesus used that metaphor to point out that he's going to be alive. I don't think that's what in context. the message was getting at, and I think it's very clear in context.
Okay, cool. So just for everybody, this is what I think. I suppose I'll click on this thing here again so people could read it as well. So I would say the most accurate way of explaining it, I mean, let's think about what is this miracle? It's quite a miracle.
How are you judging that accurate?
Say again?
What are you basing the accuracy on?
When I say accurate, like as similar as possible to Jonah's miracle. That's what I mean.
But
And so,
why do we need to interpret it if Jesus himself interpreted the meaning in context in the verse in the chapter?
So what did Jesus? I didn't get how. I didn't get anything different. Yeah, go for it. I mean, yeah, feel free. So
I'll point to the verse and let you read this.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll maybe if I stop sharing and then you can share or something like that. So do you going to? Do you want me to share the same thing or?
No, it's all right.
Do you want to You want to share screen again? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'll share it, and then once you present it, I'll scroll down to the verse again. Sorry. Yeah. So you quoted up to verse 40. And 41, yeah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh, this is the part that the quotes that you put up missed out. The men of Nineveh will rise up at judgment with this generation and condemn it. For they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here, referring to himself. If you keep reading, it gives more example. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. So in context, I think it's pretty clear that the message behind the metaphor of Jonah that he's using is twofold. What did those mentions of Nineveh and the mentioning of the Queen of the South, what does that imply in the context of the story to you?
Okay, so I understood that Jesus is greater than Jonah, and he's even greater than this Queen of the South. But I didn't get much more. Can you explain?
It wasn't comparing himself to the Queen of the South. It was he's saying he's greater than Jonah, yes, and he's greater than Solomon. Because something greater than Solomon is here, something greater than Jonah is here. But the people that he's speaking to, if I scroll back up to verse 38, can you just read verse 38?
Sure. Okay. So then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him, saying, "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you."
Yeah. So those are the people that he's given the sign to. Those are the people that were asking for the sign. I can point you to different verse where he gives a different sign to his disciples, the people that were his followers. But the people that were asking were people that were cynical, people that did not believe in him. And the reason for using the story of Jonah is because the story of Jonah is not just about Jonah in the well. It's also about the people of Nineveh, who Jonah was sent to and did not believe. And those people are who is comparing the Pharisees and the scribes to.
Okay, so let me summarize what I understand here, right? So there's more than one comparison going on here. So you've got Jesus comparing himself to Jonah, but also there's something very specific about the 3 days and the 3 nights being in the belly, the heart of the earth. What was it? 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, right? These are specific things separate from, but also, or you could say in addition to this thing that, these people, these terrible followers, these terrible Jews are not going to listen to him. And so that's in addition, but not, instead of. So Do you get it? Because
Yes.
there's two
Yeah.
parts
No,
there.
I
Yeah,
completely agree with you. That's what I was
sure.
pointing to. Those
Okay.
are the two parts I was pointing to. It's the Pharisees that he's speaking to is give the Nineveh part is important to them. They need to understand that they are is saying that they are worse than the people of Nineveh. And to Pharisees, who are people that are well read and in the Torah, and the people that were the thought leaders of the day, they would very much take that as an insult. And
Mm.
also is foreshadowing what I believe to be his death and you believe to be is the swooning. And what I guess the question I would ask you is what's part of the framing of in the belly of the heart in the heart of the earth, sorry. uh
Yeah,
because just looking at verse 40 again, it says,
yeah,
for
yeah.
just
Odd.
as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish,
Yeah.
so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The heart of the earth to me implies just using your simple analysis, under the earth, dead, someone that's been buried after they've died in the tomb. Would you say that's an accurate interpretation of that verse?
I would say generally, yeah, I would agree. But something happened, and that was he was put in a tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, roughly. Yeah. So let me just to make progress. I'm gonna thank you very much for that. That's always very interesting. Well, everything you said was very interesting. But just to make progress, I'm just going to continue with the thing. Did I accidentally press something else? I don't know what I pressed there. Anyway, so and so, as I was saying, if we were to compare or think about the situation or the miracle of what happened to Jonah, the miracle was that he stayed alive. And so, if you were going to try to stick to the miracle as close as possible, it would be not that he died and came back to life. If that was the miracle that Jesus wanted to point out, I think that's a massive, like even bigger miracle, right? Really quite different to the miracle of Jonah. So I don't think
Sorry,
anybody believe. Go on.
sorry, I just want to understand the last point you just made. So you're saying
Yeah.
that the miracle that the reason Jesus used Jonah metaphor is because of the miracle that Jonah stayed alive, correct?
So yes, miracle is that Jonah stayed alive. Yeah. So I'm going to close this very distracting WhatsApp. I was just checking if anything important is coming out. So people are telling me stuff. Anyway, so yes. So the miracle, as most pretty much, I don't know anybody who thinks Jonah died in the whale. So everybody agrees Jonah survived death. He didn't come back to life. And so if we were comparing what happened to Jesus, just in case people don't know, Jesus at least, let's say, 3 days and 2 nights, really, I would say, but in the belly of the earth, which is the tomb that he was put into. And so there's a very clear comparison of what happened. And this is not the end of the comparison, but this is the starting point, because I like to start off with what did Jesus say was going to happen? So everybody thinks Jonah didn't die. Therefore, the fairest and simplest thing to say is that Jesus didn't die.
Amen.
And if Jesus
He
somehow,
resurrected.
if somehow died and came back to life, I think a different comparison shouldn't have been made, because that's a massive thing to claim, that you're going to die and come back to life. So a different comparison should have been made. So what do you think about that, Tayo?
Yeah, I think you'll be shocked here that I do agree with what you're sort of pointing out, but not in the way that you think you would agree with at all. So I do agree that the miracle is that Jonah stayed alive, and it's I do agree that the Jonah comparison is two parts, and the second part is foreshadowing the death, but I also believe and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I don't believe that I don't believe Jonah stayed dead in the belly of the fish, therefore Jesus stayed dead. That's not the reason I believe that Jesus died. I believe that Jesus died and resurrected similarly to how Jonah was in the tomb and the belly of the, like the verse that I read said, just like Jonah was in the belly of the fish, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth, which we both agree is the tomb. I think the distinction right now is whether or not Jesus was dead before he entered the tomb. Um, I know you've got you're always well prepped and you've got a way of a flow to how you want things to flow, but I just wonder if uh, we should read the, because this conversation is really about Good Friday. It's not about, not having a conversation about the resurrection. That would be that's a whole different subject, and I think. But this is just about whether or not the Jesus that was whose body was taken from the cross was dead or not. And it's what's a one chapter narrative in the book of Mark. If you just want to go through that really quickly, so we can know the Christian narrative, know what the Christians say
Okay, go
happened on
for
Good
it. Yeah,
Friday.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate your time, so I'll
Afterwards,
kind of go with the flow. Do you wanna share your
and
screen and
also afterwards,
is it a long
yeah,
chapter? Because I'm not
after.
that much of it. Go on.
No, it's not that. I've chosen. There are four gospels, and each of them have this story. I've chosen the shortest one that
Oh, thank you very
of
much. Go
this
on. Why don't
this
you share
chapter
the
of the
screen
Friday.
and
Yeah.
yeah, go for it. Go
But
for it.
also, I don't just want to do that to show the Christian perspective. I want to do that and also air what the Ahmadiyya Muslim perspective, what the story of what happened on Good Friday is, how Jesus went from being crucified to not dying. So after, yeah, I'll just share my screen and I'll
Go for it,
present
yeah.
afterwards. Let me mark.
Let's see what are the comments saying meanwhile. So I've got who wants it? I don't get that. Any time, any place, any ring. I've got no idea what Braden is saying to me. And Jesus loves you. Cool. Okay. Thanks. Oh, okay. Got a question from a student. Wait, did you go through the part in where it said 3 days in the ground? Yeah, so 3 days in the ground for my student. Yeah, I mean oh, sorry, I'm waiting. Sorry, I didn't see that. So
No,
just
it's
for
all
my
right.
Bro is saying, did we talk about the 3 day? He's 14 years old and he's quite new to all of this. And he's saying, did we mention the 3 days in the ground? Yes, 3 days in the ground is the heart of the earth thing. So hopefully it's not too confusing. Okay, yes, please, Tayo.
Yes. So this is Mark chapter 15, and I'll try to be very quick.
Thank you.
And as soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. And they bound Jesus, led him away, and delivered him over to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered, "You have said so." And the chief priest accused him of saying many things. And Pilate asked him, "Have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further answer. So Pilate was amazed. Now, at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner from whom they asked. And amongst the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priest had delivered him up. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to him to have them release Barnabas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered them to be crucified. And I just want to highlight that word scourge, it means it's a Roman judicial penalty consisting of a severe beating with a multi-lashed whip containing embedded pieces of bone and metal. So he was beaten before he was crucified. And the soldiers led them away inside the palace, and they called together the whole battalion, and they clothed him in a purple cloak, and twisted together a crown of thorns. They put it on him, and they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they were striking his head with a reed and spitting on him, and kneeling down to pay homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak, put his own clothes on him, and they led him out to crucify. And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. And they brought him into the palace called Golgotha, and they offered them wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified them and divided his garments among them, casting lots for them to decide which it should take. It was the third hour when they crucified him. For the people, the third hour is 9 a.m. That's what that means. And the inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified two robbers, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided them, wagging their heads, saying, "Ha ha, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes mocked him to one another, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also reviled him. This is the last part, sorry. And when the sixth hour is noon. So this began at 9 a.m. We're now up to noon.
As far as I understand, their hours are different, isn't it? Their hours are worth 2 hours, I think, because they cut the day into 12
that's why I was translating converting the hours. So the third hour was on 9 a.m. The sixth hour was 12 a.m.
Yeah.
And when the sixth hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the ninth hour. The ninth hour, that's 3 p.m. So between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m., that's when the darkness was. I'm reading this because I know some of the arguments coming down later, so I think this would be good context for them.
Sure. And I think it helps some of the people who don't know the whole story or something. So it's good.
Good. And at the ninth hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders, Aaron, said, "Behold, he's calling Elijah." And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last breath, and the curtains of the temple were torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last breath, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." There were also women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, the younger, and of Joseph and of Salome. So that's the narrative of the death of Jesus. Thank you for letting me share that.
You're welcome. I appreciate your time here, so why not? Okay, so the next thing I want to show is, we talked about the sign of Jonah. Everybody can make of it what they want. And then the next bit I'm interested in is Pontius Pilate, who was mentioned in that story. He's the governor. Is that how you describe him?
Yeah. So this was under the Roman, the place of Palestine at the time was under the Roman Empire, and the way empire works is the emperor would be whoever the Caesar was at the time, and how they maintain the empire is by installing governors at different provinces, and those governors report back to the emperor, and the governors are meant to maintain peace by violence usually, but maintain peace so that there's not going to be a revolt against the emperor.
Yeah. And so he's an expert, I would say, if anybody was an expert at executing people by whipping and putting them on the cross. And so he's done it a lot of times, more than we understand it, because we don't see that on a regular basis, people being whipped and put on the cross. And so he knows something about how hard it is to kill somebody using that method. And so he says, or it says in the Bible, Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead when it was told to him that he was. That's Mark 15:44. So suppose my point is something like this. Like we said in the beginning, this is what is known as a swoon hypothesis, the idea that Jesus fainted just because somebody saw him. And we're going to talk about the intentions of some of these these soldiers who are standing by the cross. They saw him and he closed his eyes. Does that really mean he fainted? Pilate, the guy who's got a lot of experience about this, including the whipping part, he's quite well aware of this. He was quite surprised that he was dead. And so for people who really don't know about the cross, people think the cross so brutal, oh my god, it's gonna be terrible. As we said, he was on the cross Jesus was on the cross for a few hours. Okay. But it normally takes days to kill somebody on the cross. And just to put it in a bit more context, in the Philippines, where you can describe that, a type of Christian, let's say, I'm not sure if Ty would agree with this kind of Christian, but they regularly put themselves on the cross, literally hammering nails through their hands to put themselves on the cross. And I was doing a bit of research. I mean, there's a great video, not great. I don't know if how you want to. There's a video by National Geographic where they actually show somebody nailing a hand onto a cross, putting them on, and did a bit of research. There's like one guy, and he's not a record holder or anything, as far as I know. He did it 26 times every year, put himself back on the cross. So it's not, and the wounds healed very quickly, by the way, afterwards as well. So it sounds incredibly brutal. Yes, it's brutal. I wouldn't want to go on a cross and all that kind of stuff, but you kind of have to put it into context. This death that you get through the cross, not so much the whipping, but I do hear Christians say the whipping was so terrible, and that's added to the cross, made it as if, so he died
Can I ask,
really
do you
quickly.
have sorry to jump in.
Go on.
Do you have
Go on.
anything to present to? Because I saw the claims in the booklet you sent, and I also looked for claims to back what you've been saying. So you mentioned someone in Thailand.
No,
And you mentioned
Philippines.
Philippines.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That and you also mentioned that crucifixion takes days.
Yeah.
To
It's a very slow death.
before people die. Yeah. From all the research that I've found, that's contradictory. So if you've got anything that you can present, I can also present what the research that I've got. If you've got, so if you've
Okay.
got, I've got
Let's see this.
Well.
Let's put a video up, I suppose. A bit of a video. I'll kind of let's do it like this. So remove that. Get a new tab up. YouTube. Might make it more fun in some ways to see this happening. Philippines.
This will be informative.
Yeah, okay. Philippines. Put on cross. Let's see what comes up. Oh yeah, it's the same one. I'll share. Let me just pause and share another one. If I click share present again. I have to stop the first one. Okay, or maybe change it. Stop screen Add a new one. Share screen. Let's just do the whole screen this time. It's easier. This one. Okay. So yeah, nice background. This guy. Let's see his hands. He's made his own barbed wire thing. Barbed wire version of the crown of thorns. Not comfortable, but and he also talks about, let's make it full screen, isn't it? These are the nails that he whips himself with as well. And at some point they're going to show him actually his, here we go. So maybe I'll play it. This is his hand. Brutal. He does this every year. Whoa. Not nice. Anyway, and then they show afterwards his hands. So that's his hands, and they say that it heals very quickly. I'm not saying it's a great experience. I'm just saying it does take a bit of time to kill people
Yeah.
like that. And he was, yeah.
I know you did earlier. You dismissed the lashing and the scourging, but that's why I thought it was important to highlight what scourging meant. It's not whipping with cane or whipping with ropes. It's whipping with things with metal and clanging bit. And yeah, is that the evidence that you've got? I can also show like medical.
Yeah, go on. Your turn. You
analysis.
go for it. Yeah, so I'll hide my one.
Yeah, so there were two that I found very quickly, to be fair, that were actual medical professionals who analyzed what the literature said, and they're trying to their intention is to find out, okay, what actually medically if someone was to physically go through this punishment, would they die, how quickly would they die, and what would be the cause of death. And yeah, this one was actually I used a Wayback Machine, as you can see, because it's on the physical death of Jesus by William D. Edwards, M.D. Wesley, Gabriel, and it said Jesus of Nazareth underwent Jewish and Roman trials, was flogged and was sentenced to death by crucifixion. The scourging produced deep stripe-like lacerations and appreciable blood loss, and it probably set the stage for hypovolemic shock, as evidenced by the fact that Jesus was too weakened to carry the cross. Carry the crossbar to Golgotha, as I read earlier. The major pathological effect of crucifixion was an interference with normal respirations. Accordingly, death resulted primarily from hypovolemic shock and exhaustion asphyxia. Jesus' death was ensured by the thrust of a soldier spear into his side. Modern medical interpretation of the historical evidence indicates that Jesus was dead and was taken down from the cross. Now, I'm obviously I'm not going to read the whole thing. So I just thought I'll get what their
Yeah,
summary
people
was.
can look
I'll
at
also
the
share.
GodandScience.org.
Yes, and I'll also share this. I have to stop this first. Sorry. Stop then presents.
Oh, I think you have to undo the last one or something. Oh no. Oh, should I do it now? I don't know. Oh, yeah, cool. Oh, no, that's good. That's good.
Oh no, sorry. I clicked stop
that's
sharing.
okay. I'm gonna stop my one as well, just in case that helps.
Oh, no, I've lost where to do that. There we go. Yeah. So this is a study of death by crucifixion. with attempted explanation of the death of Jesus Christ. The authors are respectively clinical professors of medicine and clinical assistants professor of medicine at Louisiana State University School of Medicine. So this is just to show that this isn't Christians going over trying to prove their case. There's I found like 6 or 7 of these were just the two I picked out, and they'll usually
Cool.
link to a university or research into someone's doctorate research. Is okay. Let's do a medical analysis of the crucifixion, and all of them come back with saying yes, it died of hypothermic shock. And this is just another example. So all of the
So
medical
is the hyper? Can I just check something? So when you say hypothermic shock, so is it?
hypothermic, I think is how we call it.
Oh, okay. So are you saying that's the normal cause of? That's the normal effect that causes the death on a cross, or is there something special going on that caused Jesus to die
No,
only
I'm
in a few
saying
hours?
I don't also your claim of I'm gonna need evidence for your claim that crucifixion last days. What I found is 6 to 9 hours. Usually but they can last. It can last longer, but there's no evidence to suggest days or weeks or anything like you've suggested. Apart from
Okay.
the guy in Philippines that you say do it every year and he was back like Wolverine. So that X-Men fan,
He
drop a
could
Wolverine
be
reference.
Wolverine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I forgot what your question was.
Yeah. So so are you saying this hypothermic, whatever it was, is?
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. What's the all of the paper? Okay. Let me just see if I can find a section that details what. Let me go back on it. Was it this one that talks about the sources of what is the first one? Just to answer your question really quickly, if I can't find it, it's they analyze it based upon the narrative, and that's why I read the narrative earlier, the passage, and all of the lashes, and they don't just use the biblical narrative; they use outside sources as well as the Bible. It's okay. What were the method of lashing in the Roman Empire? How vigorous and how what's it up? So that's the research that they do. I can send you
Okay.
the links, all of them. You can read through them and see how thorough they were.
Cool. Yeah.
From
Thank you.
the two that I picked out were the ones that I read out, and their sources are all mostly Bible and also non-biblical. That's why I picked them up.
Okay, so according to these documents, basically what you're saying is it's normal to die in the time span that Jesus died in. According
Yes.
with all the whipping and the cross.
Well, according to all of the medical analysis that I can find, if you can find something different, please do share. But I can find
Cool.
all of them so agree that yes, Jesus died on the cross, and detailing how he died, they all seem to agree that it's this. I don't know what hypothermic and all of the asphyxia is, but that's
Sure.
what they come up.
Sure, that's fine. So as I said before, people can do their own research and thing, but I'm going to continue with the claim. And the base of the claim is that the expert of the time was surprised that Jesus had already died.
Okay, yes, let's get to that.
So yeah, let's do that one and add this. And yeah, and by the way, the conversation.
Sorry, your proof. Sorry, the proof text that you had for Pontius Pilate was Mark 15:44. Yeah, I thought it
yes,
would be. Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
So I like to try to keep it simple as possible, and I think it's also let's just say that again. So in the non-live comments, we've got the live chat here, but in the comments, let's continue the conversation. For anybody who wants to always respond, I'm going to do some research. I've done some sort of basic research with like live, current human beings and stuff like that. But there's always, we can continue the conversation in the comments. But just to keep it simple, what did Pilate think? He's an expert, and he said, "What, dead already? That's a bit surprising." Um, and then what have we got to say? Let's scroll down to the next quote. So now we've got, and again, I don't want to make it long and drawn out, just some brief, simple ideas. Um, so we've got one of Jesus's followers, and I'm not sure if this, yeah, I'm putting it in some disorder, and I'm going to go back into what exactly happened
Yeah,
on the cross.
sorry.
Yeah.
Before you carry on, I just want to hear you say what the Good Friday narrative is from the Ahmadiyya Muslim perspective. So Jesus, uh, what happened with
So he
Pilate?
survives across.
No, I'm talking about. So did he speak to Pilate there? Is it similar? Like I read earlier, he was taken to Pilate by the Jewish authorities and leaders, and his accusation was blasphemy because he said he could destroy the temple and bring it back in 3 days. Is that the same in the Muslim?
So we basically follow the narrative of the Bible,
Okay.
except for we say some conclusions were made by people that he had died when only his eyes had closed, for example.
So
Very quick,
up until his death, it's the same narrative.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Barabbas, the whole story, yeah, you know. And so the next interesting piece of evidence I want to give that Jesus was not killed on the cross, and I'm going to go back as well a bit to the broken legs or not afterwards. But Nicodemus this is quoting from the Bible. So Nicodemus is a follower, I think a rich follower of Jesus. Nicodemus also, who earlier had come to Jesus by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds in weight. This is John 19:39. So it's a huge amount. And for people who don't know, aloes is, well, aloe vera is a type of aloe. It's part of the plant, okay, part of that group of plants. And they're very well known. Some people might know this because even I used to use aloe vera. It's good for the skin, it's good for healing, it's good for, I understand what is called as inflammation. Basically, when you have a lot of problems, internal injuries, and it's like calms things down. And so is myrrh as well. So you got myrrh. These are two kinds of medicines that Jesus would have needed.
Sorry. Just quick question. Is this also the Nicodemus part of, is that in the Quran? Because this is after the
No,
death.
this is just the Bible. This is a quote from the Bible.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going through the narrative. Okay, yeah. And so we've got this person, a follower of Jesus, taking Jesus away with medicines to apply to him.
Wait, where does it say it took him away? Sorry, it doesn't say that in that verse.
So Nicodemus also came by night, bringing a mixture. So it didn't actually say he took him away, but somebody took him away to this tomb. And I think somewhere he asked permission to take.
It's Simon in the narrative I read.
Was
Earlier,
it Simon who took him? Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so Nicodemus, I think it's not disputed that he took these medicines to apply to Jesus.
Oh no,
We can check that.
common burial practice to clean your dead before you're putting
Clean
in
the
the tomb.
dead.
Yes.
Right. So what I'm going to say is that the what happens to Muslims and Jews when they're dead, yes, they're cleaned, but no medicines are applied to them. So the Bible claim, no, does it claim? I can't remember now. That this is a Jewish ritual to apply these kind of medicines to the dead, which is not. So then this is adding to the story of, So first of all, it's, the expert in the story is surprised that Jesus is dead. Yet he says, yeah, go and take him away. And this person who's taking him away, or asked to take him away, goes along with medicines, which are really good for healing in Jesus's, particular ailments. Yeah, what do you think so far?
Yeah, so far I think I don't so if the Quran follows the biblical narrative up until the death of Jesus, um, then I can understand why you've misquoted and misunderstood the verses that came after the death, because both, firstly, the Pontius Pilate's being doubtful of Jesus's death. If you read just up the next verse, he asked his centurion, he asked one of his guards to confirm the death of Jesus. So he wasn't there. He wasn't present at the crucifixion. He had guards. His guard, just like a general would have soldiers that report back to him and let him know the status of things. He asked one of his guards, and the death of Jesus was confirmed. The Nicodemus bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes. Again, just keep reading, and he talks about they wrap them up in linen and burying them in the tomb. So these are all things that happen, and all of these characters that you're bringing in the biblical narrative, that they come from, because, like you said, they're not in the Quran. So you're either misinterpreting the Bible, or you're adding to the Quran, which I don't think you're allowed to do. So if you're taking it from the biblical narrative, then you have to read it in context. And in context of biblical narrative, all of these characters, Pontius Pilate, Nicodemus, were all people that confirmed the death of Jesus. There is no ambiguity to the narrative. But I guess if I have to paint a picture of why Jesus didn't die on the cross, I can cherry pick a few verses here and there to say, oh, there are people that were doubtful, and I don't know if being doubtful is evidence that something did not happen.
Sure. So thank you for explaining that. So what I want to, because you talked about the soldier confirming Jesus dead when Pilate asked. So let me kind of explain the context as we were talking about. So you read, I'm not sure, I can't remember everything you read, but you can confirm this.
Right, I
This
read
happened.
a lot.
Yeah. No. But you can confirm that Pilate really did not want to kill Jesus, and we've got lots of reasons. He gave Barabbas as an offering. Take Barabbas, and he was like, "What has Jesus done?" It's like, why? Okay, and then you've got Pilate's wife given a nightmare, basically scaring Pilate's wife to send a message, urgent message, saying, "Do not kill Jesus." Okay, she says, "I've suffered much. I've been quite lazy, and I didn't get every." Did I get the quote for that? I don't know.
Do you want me to get? I've got it if you want it.
Yeah, go on. Oh wait, so I've got it. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." So, yeah. So the mind of Pilate is, this man is innocent, and he really doesn't want to kill this person, and he probably trusts his wife. And he wouldn't be, I think it's quite reasonable to think that he's beginning to possibly think Jesus is a godly man of some sort, for his wife to be sent nightmares by who other than God, okay, to save Jesus. So Pilate could very easily, be in the mindset of, how do we save Jesus? Okay, so he's put on the cross for only a few hours, and we'll do the research to prove, hopefully later on. That's a weakness in my research. That, I mean, I showed some evidence that you don't die easily on the cross, but hopefully some more research, and we'll compare our research. So he was put on the cross only for a few hours, and he knew, just for people, for context again, that Jesus would have to be taken off the cross because of this. You're not allowed to keep anybody on the cross during the Sabbath, Jewish rule. And so what happens next? So I'm explaining the mindset of Pilate. Now I want to ask something about the mindset of a soldier. What does the soldier think? As they say, if you ask a soldier, let's say, or anybody who's totally subservient to a boss, to a leader, if you ask the soldier, to jump, his answer is how high, right? Which is,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do whatever you think is I think, And so with that, a soldier is a soldier. And, Roman soldiers are no barbarian soldiers. They know what orderly means. They know their place. Okay. So I'm kind of feeling a bit lazy, but Chief Crowd Barabbas, blah, blah. Okay. Somewhere in there, I've got okay, let's look at this bit. Okay. So they turn up to these three people on the cross, and they go, let's not break Jesus' legs. And people should know what the relevance of breaking legs is. Death on the cross, like I said, and we'll dispute this and whatever, it's a slow process. It's kind of like a very slow hanging through hunger and internal suffocation, which you might talk about, pleurisy, which builds up, like water building up underneath the lungs. It's a very slow death. And what reduces or makes the death longer, let's say, is being able to rest on the nail that is going through your feet as support, so you get more support. It's like when you're hung to death, death by hanging, they kick the stool and you're going to die. But once as long as you got that support, you're going to live longer. So the breaking the leg wasn't just to break the legs and the pain of breaking the legs. It's to reduce your ability to hang and make you die faster. And so these soldiers turn up and go, yeah, he's dead. Okay. And they break the legs of the other two people, but not Jesus. Very interesting. But not only do they do that, they poke him on the side, not in his vital organs, and blood and water gush out. So I hope I have lots of versions of this. Oh, yes, I have. Phew, I've made an effort. Good. Okay. So it's very interesting that the verse of the Bible where they talk about blood and water gushing out, I would say a deliberate attempt has been made to hide this because people have realized the consequences of this particular verse. It says, the soldier pierced his abdomen. And so one translation by something called The Voice, this is a website called Biblegate. Yes, Biblegate, yes. A Bible Gateway, yeah. I put it there. Phew. Okay, so so they've got all the different translations, and some don't really make it really obvious that blood and water was gushing out. Why does that even matter? Okay, so if you die, in a few minutes, your blood coagulates. That means kind of dries up, and your
so which version are they trying to hide the blood and water?
Oh, okay. So what they say
I'm just going through all
is,
the versions now.
yeah, I put a few.
Oh God.
Immediately, blood and water came out. Doesn't sound like blood and water gushing out as such, right? But immediately you get, oh, immediately, okay, you get a sense of what's going on, okay. And then there's another one, right away, blood and water came out, right? And there's all sorts
So
of variations on that.
so it's the speed they're trying to add, not the blood and water.
So yes, that's thank you for clarifying them, because I'm not. I need people like you to kind of help me clarify things, because things are in my head, but I'm not explaining them very well necessarily. So the idea is there's a speed. Okay, it's not just dripping out. It's not dropping out, like oozing out or anything like that, of coagulated, dried up blood. And by the way, it's not just dried up blood. Your blood vessels collapse and everything starts falling apart. So you don't really have blood and water shooting out if you're dead, but you do have that here. And these are Roman soldiers, kind of experienced in killing, and they know what dead people are like as well. And they're like, give them a poke in a very particular place, not through the vital organs. Oh, blood and water gushing out. Oh yeah, he's dead. Oh yeah, of course he's dead, right? And then I'm sure they're picked very carefully, these soldiers. There's a plan, and it's a very careful plan, putting Jesus on the cross only a few hours before he's to be taken off. And so they go back, and the pilot says, so they're dead, yeah? Yeah, they're dead. The soldier says, the soldier who knows what he's supposed to say. And yeah, he's let go, and one of his followers with loads of medicine puts him in the tomb, and they get to work applying all these medicines to him, which are known for healing these particular wounds. Yeah, what do you think so far? What do you think about
that? So I think the narrative you've just laid out, and when I read it, when you sent the resources, I thought the same thing as well, which is, it sounds like the bastardization of the Bible that the LGBTQ people do when they're trying to justify why it's okay to be gay and be Christian, or why it's okay to have a gay priest. And some even go as far as trying to find verses in the Bible to prove that Jesus is gay. And how they do it is they pick a verse out of context and then make a story around the verse that's not in the scripture. And that sounds to me like what you've done is picked out that Pilate was doubtful, and then think, oh, why could it be doubtful? Maybe because there's a conspiracy between Pilate, Nicodemus, Simon to not to keep Jesus alive and make sure he doesn't die. And I just want to, okay, that's my gut feeling. Now I just want to take a few of them step by step. So, firstly, the fact that Pilate, we both agree that Pilate was very reluctant to crucify Jesus. He could not find a fault in him. He was bargaining, like you said, with Barabbas, saying, "Why would you, this is it's a no-brainer in Pilate's mind. You choose Jesus over Barabbas." But the people, Jesus' accusers were adamant they want him crucified. I read it earlier a few times. It said, "Crucify him, crucify him." And we detailed earlier what it means to be what it means to be a governor. The governor reports back to the emperor. It's the emperor that the emperor's job is to make sure the empire gets bigger or does not get smaller under your leadership. So they are very studious to avoid any revolution, anything that could sort of disrupt the authority of the states that are occupying the land. I agree with you. The vision, the nightmare, as you called it, it's called a dream in the Bible, but the nightmare, because she was very disturbed by it, that the wife had was from God, because I believe nothing happens without God say so. So I agree with you there. But both these things to me are, and in the context of the story of the Bible, points to Jesus being an innocent man, points to the fact that this is a man that there is no fault, there is no reason why this man should be died. The lamb that had no, the lamb that was sent to die had no blemish, meaning that there is no reason, there is no, that the other two criminals next to him were robbers. That's their crime. There's a crime there. The crime that the charge that they brought to Pilate was for Jesus was flimsy, and Pilate recognized that, recognized there is no reason for this man to die because there is no charge here. But Pilate also knows that he is responsible to the emperor. We spoke, you detailed how the soldiers knows who their master is. So does the governor as it relates to the emperor. And he knows there is nothing, if a riot begins starts off in his province that he can't control, now the Caesar has to get involved. And if Caesar gets involved, that means replacing the governor, because that means leadership is going to rate and replacement is to happen. So to avoid the riots, and it says it in the verse, to appease the riots, he crucified Jesus. So the narrative of, because his wife had the dream, he had to follow his wife. He chose to obey. He chose to be wary of the consequence of dealing with Caesar rather than the dream that his wife happened to have.
I get what you're saying. I think that's a really good point, that he doesn't want to get in trouble and lose his job. Okay. But I also thought he was a very smart guy, and he follows his conscience, and he would have been a bit fearful.
Why do you think it follows his conscience?
I
What's
think
in
it's
this?
so. I'll just quickly explain what I think, because I think there's something beyond what happened, which doesn't contradict what you're saying, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So I'm just putting. Okay. So first of all, there's like, if your wife says something and you trust your wife and you know your wife is smart, okay, and she says that,
Yeah,
any reasonable person would.
that's the adding on that I was trying to point at is
I'm
the
not saying
pilot.
adding on. I'm just I'm following the evidence.
No,
That's
I'm
all.
saying you're adding on to the relationship, like the wife is smart, she trusts his wife. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying there's no evidence in the story to point to this. The relationship was not the focus of the story. There was
Sure, that's of course it wasn't. Yeah. So what I mean, I'm glad you said it that way. The relationship was not the focus of the story, because what I'm pointing out really is that there is a real story, what happened to Jesus, and it was, people tried to hide it, tried to make him god like, but to hide the truth is a difficult thing, and there are all bits of evidence lying around that they weren't able to hide. And
but
then the
that
truth that Jesus is a man will inevitably come out through all these bits of evidence. Let me just quickly explain a bit further. And so what did Jesus do after he came off the cross? He didn't say, "Hey, yeah, man, I beat you guys, beat you Jews." No, he hid. He was very quiet, and then he disappears from the story of the Bible. And it's very important, I think, to complete this sort of story for people to understand where I'm coming from, is that he said he came for the lost tribes of the house of Israel, the lost tribes. Lost because historically only two, or some people say three, a bit of a third tribe, were in that area of Galilee, right, where the story of Jesus was. Okay, the rest of the tribes were taken away by emperor, or no, king I can never say it, Nebuchadnezzar II or something, right? I think I said it fairly well. Okay, so they were taken as slaves, and they were taken off, and some two tribes came back, but a lot of them historically were spread in places like Afghanistan, Kashmir, northern India, and different places. And he said he came for them. So he left the little area, Galilee, where the story of the Bibles, and then the story ends in the Bible, he's gone to heaven. But actually, what really happened was he quietly, as the rest of the Bible, the tiny bit of his story that remains in the Bible says, he quietly left this, or while he was still in that area, he was very he only moved around at night time, and he showed himself quietly to his followers, but I'm not going to go into that too much. He said, "Here's my wounds. I'm not a ghost," and things like that. That adds to the story that he was in fact a man. So just to come back to what you were saying, yes, Pilate has to be worried or be sure that there is no trouble, but maybe there was an understanding that Jesus would get out of that place and continue the rest of the mission that he said he'd come for without causing Pilate any further problems. What do you think about that?
I think the genesis of my interest in this topic was, I think you made the claim that there's evidence in the Bible that this narrative that you've expounded is true. I think as far as narrative goes, it's a decent narrative. There are a lot of Gnostic sort of detailing of what happened to Jesus that I find interesting, that are similar veil to this, not quite as specific, but similar to it. But what I haven't found is evident for this narrative in scriptures. It's at best conjecture. It's pointing to events that not pointing to a moment that happened and then building out a story around it of why this moment happened, even though in those, if you just carry on reading, it tells you why the moments happened. So that's how the story sounds to me. It does differ very much from, not very much, differ slightly from the mainstream Muslim narrative of what happened to Jesus, which I'm very happy to have better understanding, better clarity of which Muslim sects believe what about Jesus. That helps me immensely.
Okay, and when you say not evidence, I'm just trying to understand why you don't call it evidence. So, for example, the blood and water gushing out, which
Yes,
makes sense. And it's kind of,
like,
I would call medical evidence. Do you not accept medical evidence?
so that's why I was trying to. So at first I thought you were saying that the Bible is trying to hide the fact that blood and water came out of him.
I would say that translators, realizing that this is evidence of Jesus still being alive, try to translate away. You don't see too many instances of the word gushing out, which is more obvious than suddenly came out. I think there's a bit of a conspiracy to hide that.
For the viewers, any Bible, whichever translation you pick up, they'll painfully explain why they choose which word. So if you're curious what each word is, just read on the subtext.
Sure. But just to make the point, like, don't you accept medical evidence?
Yeah, but I don't. I do accept medical evidence, and I thought I thought I'm the only one that's presented medical evidence so far today, because I've produced medical research paper from medical professors, not student medical professors, medical PhD students who have looked into this topic and analyzed it medically, how it is. So when you pointed to the fact that gushing out of blood and water, you're saying that if it wasn't gushing out, then that shows that Jesus is dead. But if it is gushing out, it shows that it's alive, and that the Bible has been trying to hide it. You've not provided the evidence that gushing out does mean gushing out means alive, or gushing out means doesn't mean dead. That's just a claim you've said. There's no
okay. Yep. So people can check how long it takes for blood to coagulate.
Yeah, and also just on that note, where was my notes? That was so from what this is a paragraph. I'm just going to read from one of those two medical papers I showed earlier. Then this relates to the blood.
Do you want to show it again?
Well,
you could just we're just rounding off anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fine. There's no need to go for it. So it says crucifixion typically resulted in death through one or two ways. The first way was hypovolemic shock. The prolonged rapid heartbeat resulting from hypovolemic shock can cause fluid to gather in the area around the heart. This is called a pericardial effusion.
Okay.
And Yeah, so those are the medical from those paper medical terms for why there's water, blood and water gathered around the area that was pierced. And also the gushing now thing, I'm just looking for I've looked through NLT, NIV, NLV, and all of them says not gushing out, but that the blood and water comes out. So they all admit that blood and water comes out. None of them say blood and water drip out, and all of them says blood and water come out after a spear has been inserted into his side. So the image that infuses is not water slowly dripping out. They're all
Yeah,
very clear that
good.
this
I'm
is what
glad.
happened. It's discussion now. So
Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think, and yeah, so I don't see how that's evidence that there's a conspiracy to hide that blood and water came out.
It just seems it, but maybe not. Who knows? Okay, but the main thing I'm concerned about is that it's medical evidence.
Yeah, but
So
which medical evidence? Sorry.
that is medical. The fact that if somebody's heart is beating, only then does blood shoot out, and the water is
I
pleurisy.
just I just gave the medical evidence to probably literally the opposite of your claim.
Uh, did
What
you? I
what?
don't know. I
Yes,
don't know.
that's what I just read out.
Say that again. So you said that
Shock.
people
Okay,
die quickly.
so
I'm talking about a
the prolonged rapid heartbeat resulting from hypothermic shock can cause fluid to gather in one area around the heart. This is called pericardial effusion.
right. So
That's
you're saying, are you? Maybe a misunderstanding. Are you saying that when you're in the cross, blood can build up somewhere near the heart, and if you're poked in the side, that blood would shoot out. So despite you being dead, that blood would still shoot out. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to
wait. Do
understand.
you wait? Are you saying that when you die, the blood and water in your body evaporates?
No, I'm saying it coagulates. It becomes like more solid or
And
oozy.
that
So
happens
it won't
instantly.
shoot out if you're dead, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, so this is why the gush now is important to you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm
So
glad. Sorry, I didn't explain that very well. Yeah.
yes, okay, all right, okay. Now the emphasis on gushing makes a little bit more sense to me because I've been trying to
Sorry.
figure out
Yeah.
what angle on gushing is. So you're saying the medical evidence, which it's a medical claim, no, there's no evidence has been provided, is that blood and water coagulates in a dead body, and if it was pierced and it was
Minutes
dead,
after, yeah.
the water would drip out.
First of all, the blood would ooze out as at best. So drip out, yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, drip out, but not shoot out, yeah. And then the water bit, the pleurisy.
And then this is the evidence that Jesus did.
That's all right. You can laugh. So
Yeah,
okay, cool. Yeah. So I mean, again, I'm not here to like say go around the whole story again and again. I think there's good evidence. You don't think is good evidence. Fantastic. Really, the point was that I wanted a decent comeback, and I think you've done lots of research and in this. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. All I want to do now, from at least maybe the Islamic perspective, is go all the way back to the beginning, which is the verse I mentioned. Kind of like a roundup. Like, what did the Quran say? And I think it's quite amazing given the biblical evidence. So then, and they're saying, we did kill the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, whereas they slew him not, nor crucified him, but he was made to appear to them like one crucified. And by the way, maybe, I don't know if you know, the other Muslims believe that poor guy, somebody like Judas or something, was put on the cross and he was made to appear like one crucified, but it doesn't say Judas, it says he, and everybody knows he is Jesus. So anyway, so Jesus looked like he had died. He was made to appear like one crucified, i.e. killed by crucifixion, and those who differ therein certainly are in a state of doubt about it. So I demonstrated Pilate was certainly in a state of doubt about it, and anybody experienced, I would say, in this process. So if Pilate was surprised. I'm sure anybody else who's got similar experience, would also be surprised that Jesus had died so quickly. They have no definite knowledge thereof, but only follow conjecture, some sort of guess, and they did not convert this conjecture into certainty. They did not check what really happened. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And let's unsquare the screen, unshare the screen. That's the word. And get a nice, lovely close-up picture so I can say thank you, Tayo. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Any excuse to dig into scripture is a good thing. One of your goals is, you said to me when I first met, is to help Christians read the Bible more. They said if they read the Bible more, they'll be better people. So having these conversations forces me to go deeper into the Word of God, and that's a blessing to me. And it's a blessing that I get to share what I've learned with your audience. So thank you for that.
Spoken like a true believer. Like any true believer wants to talk about the Bible, exactly like me. I want to talk about the Quran and the Bible, whatever. And just to really round it off, what's the point of all of this? I'm hoping, like I said in the beginning, my simple goal is to make people happier. And if the truth was more simple, and the truth was that actually God always guided people and Jesus just another prophet, then that makes it really simple to follow and find direction in life. Of course you disagree with that, but anyway, thank you so much for your time. Always good having you on the show. Very thoughtful Christian. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.